Chapter 26. The Source of Law. When God begins the Ten Commandments with the words, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," Exodus 23, Deuteronomy 5:7, he not only bans the worship of any other god, but also the acceptance of any other laws than his own. Because he is the Lord who delivered his people, quote, out of the house of bondage, Exodus 22, out of slavery, he especially has the doubly legitimate claim on them to obey his law. He is, first, their creator, and second, their redeemer. Hence, obedience to his law is mandatory. In any system of thoughts, the effectual God of that system is the source of law. He is the definer. In any culture, the definer determines and identifies the meaning of things and their qualities. Whatever is can only be known in terms of the defining factor. In the Bible, God is the creator, determiner, and the definer. In Genesis 2, Adam is given the task of naming the animals, that is, classifying them, for to name means to define and classify. This is to be done under God in terms of his creating purposes. The naming meant to understand God's creative order. Now, without biblical faith, both man and the state will play God. This is original sin, Genesis 3:5. God is a necessary concept in human thought because some kind of ultimacy must exist. If not God, then man. For example, Randall Craig Fastnack Jr. in Life Child, The End of Poverty, the case for licensing all parents, gives us a Darwinian faith. He presupposes the necessary total control of man by a world state to eliminate poverty, retardation, disease, and death. All youth must complete 2 years of national service. All couples are limited to 2 children. All births must be licensed. Prior to conception, all couples must have lived together for 3 years, whether married or not. World poverty, death, war, hunger, nuclear weapons, and more must be eliminated. This movement, quote, points that man is God, end quote. Virtually no freedom is allowed to individuals, but they are to think of themselves as God. Cash will be eliminated. There will be a search for intelligent life on other solar systems with the assurance, quote, that those civilizations are at least 1 million years older than ours, end quote. A major good, quote, is the elimination of death. Within 50 years, we could have the capability to live forever with healthy bodies and minds, end quote. This would mean 2042 at the latest. There will be population control. A computerized and full history for every citizen will be compiled and will be available to anyone, and so on and on. Given the premise that man is God, this is a logical perspective, but since man is not God, the logical alternative is that God is God and his law must bind us. For the churches to be antinomian is to shift the source of law from God to man. Having done so, it is illogical for them to quibble when the state legalizes abortion, homosexuality, or anything else. They have already transferred the lawmaking, defining, and determining powers from God to man and the state. The hostility to theonomy and Christian reconstruction rests in the recognition that such a faith refuses to surrender God's claims on man and the state. Fastnack, having defined God, quite logically transfers lawmaking, defining, and predestination to the state. Too much of the thinking within the church is illogical. It represents a syncretistic approach, a combination of those elements in Christianity and humanism most congenial to the religious dilettante. Such a perspective has proven to be an avenue to both success and impotence. If our source of law is not God, we shall have tyranny in the name of sweetness and light. In the summer of 1996, the Spartanburg, South Carolina County Council, disturbed by the growing endorsement of homosexuality by officials of public education, passed a resolution condemning such stances and affirming, quote, the standards to which this community subscribes." End quote. A great outcry resulted, led by pro-homosexuals and by the media. The Greenville County clergy issued a statement which said in part, quote, "We believe that sexuality is a deeply personal matter about which reasonable and godly people have vastly differing opinions. We feel that this is properly a matter between a people and their God. We believe that the real standards of our community are honesty, integrity, cooperation, respect for the law, and willingness to contribute time and energy to the life of the community. Good citizenship knows no bounds of religion, skin color, ethnicity, or sexual lifestyle." End quote. Such statements by the clergy are now routine. Respect for what law did these clergymen of Greenville County call for? God's or man's? Obviously, God's law was in no way considered as a valid standard. Of course, the business community very early surrendered to the pressure by the pro-homosexuals. A moral capitalism is the ever-increasing ally of anti-Christianity because a moral stance is intolerable where profits are involved. Modern-day capitalism often does not believe in a free market, preferring a controlled one. Being capitalistic no more ensures goodness than does being a church member. The spirit of Pilate marks much of history. When Pilate said, "What is truth?" John 18:38, he was not asking a question, but rather dismissing the subject as unrealistic, impractical, or utopian. Pragmatism marks their perspective. But as St. Paul warns us, quote, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Galatians 6:7.